In the capital, the imperial palace is full of golden green and bright lights, and the palace banquet tonight is as popular as the New Year. In the hall, all the civil and military officials were having a slight chess and sluts, and the concubines were smiling in a mess. They were harmonious on the surface, but everyone knew how many sword-shaped shadows were hidden underneath. I, Lin Haotian, wearing a slightly shabby green robe, stood in a corner of the hall, looking at the green field, and sneered in my heart. In those years, I was blowing the wind and licking blood from the knife. Finally, I was called back to the capital. I thought I could get a good face. What was the result? Half a moment after entering the hall, no one looked at me, and even the young master dared to look at people with his nostrils. Your Highness, bear with it. Let's come back just now, don't cause trouble. The iron pillar next to me reminded me in a low voice. This guy is my squat servant whom I brought back from the border. He looks like an iron tower, full of face and cheeks, and it looks like he is not easy to mess with. Creating trouble? When did I, Lin Haotian, take the initiative to cause trouble? I grinned, picked up the wine glass in front of me, took a sip in the pretended dress, and swept over the center of the hall. The most glamorous woman sitting tonight, Princess Zhao Manli. She was wearing a red robe, swaying with a sway, smiling like a flower, but the cold light in her eyes could make people tremble through the old distance. My heart is clear, this woman is definitely not a fuel-efficient light. In those years, I heard a lot of her news, saying that she was cruel and ruthless, so many people offended her for no reason and died of illness. Sure enough, it took no time for she stood up, carried a glass of wine, and walked towards me slowly. Sixth Prince, I heard that you have made great contributions in the border area. Today I will return to Beijing. I will give you a special cup. Zhao Manli's voice was so sweet that honey could drip out. The wine glass in his hand shook, and the fragrance of the wine was swaying, which attracted many people around him to look at him. I lowered my head and saw that the wine was clear and there was no problem on the surface, but a sudden buzzing sound in my brain, as if I was knocked hard by something. That's my gold finger, the super brain is warning me. This thing was awakened after I picked up an ancient secret book on the border. I never forget it and have insight into people's hearts. It is a cheater. At this moment, it clearly told me, this wine is poisonous, it is poisonous. I snorted coldly in my heart, and I didn't look vocal on my face. I smiled and took the wine glass. Empress Nude toast herself, how dare Haotian not be merciful? But I deliberately paused, looked up at her, and slight on the corner of my mouth. The fragrance of this wine is so scented, I'm afraid it's treasured in the palace. It's a pity for the Empress to not take a sip. Zhao Manli's face froze and she smiled sweeter. Your Highness smiled. I am weak in my palace and I have a strong alcohol tolerance. I will leave this glass of wine to your Highness. Oh? I'm weak? I deliberately stretched my tunes. After a week, I saw many people looking here, and simply raised my voice. Is that Empress's wine too weak to drink? Why don't I ask the doctor to come and experience the wine first, so that I won't be weak after drinking it? As soon as this word came out, the whole palace was silent. Zhao Manli's face was as white as paper in an instant, and she was panicked in her eyes, but she was actually an old man from the palace and quickly calmed down and said with a strong smile, Your Highness really loves to laugh. This wine is a treasure in the palace. How can there be any problem? Are there any questions? Do you know if you try? I sneered and turned my head to wink at the iron post. He was in the divine sense and immediately took out a small silver bullet from his sleeve. This was the poison test tool I brought back from the border. The poison that could be detected by blood-sealed throat. The iron pillar, in front of the crowd, inserted the silver pin into the wine, and the next second, the pin tip turned black. The hall was so quiet that it was heard in an instant that everyone stared wide, and even the emperor sitting in the upper throne sat upright. Empress Nude, this wine is so precious. Why did it get dark as soon as I tried? I looked at Zhao Manli coldly, filled with ridicule. Didn't the Empress think that Lin Haotian, who came back from the border, has a very good life, and it's nothing to say about drinking some poisonous wine? Zhao Manli was panicked at this moment and hurriedly said, "Your Highness has misunderstood. This servant must have been wrong with this wine. How could this palace harm you? Have you taken the wrong?" I snorted coldly, put the wine glass heavily on the table, and glanced over the palace ladies behind her who were lowered and dared not say anything. "Why would you please explain it? Who did the poisonous wine take the wrong at the banquet? Or did you say that this poisonous wine was impeding me?" Everyone in the palace looked at Zhao Manli, and the discussions came one after another. Those noble people who usually look down on me are now closed, and there is a little fear in their eyes. The emperor's face was even more difficult to see, but this happened at the banquet, which was equivalent to people hitting him on the face. "It's over." The emperor finally opened his mouth, his voice low, with a little anger. "Concubine Zhao, how do you explain this?" Zhao Manli bit her teeth tightly and knelt down with a sound, trembling with a trembling voice. "Your Majesty, I have no intention of harming others. This wine must be someone who deliberately framed me. Please observe clearly. Look at it." I sneered, and the super brainsmart flight in my brain moved quickly, instantly capturing the broken trace in her words. "Since Queen Mother is crying for justice, why would you call the little palace lady beside you for a question?" I just saw her, and her hands were shaking as she served the wine, afraid she knew something. The little palace girl behind Zhao Manli heard it and sat directly on the ground with her face as white as a ghost. Before Zhao Manli could open his mouth to stop him, the iron pillar had already strode forward and carried the man into the hall. "Say, who gave you this wine?" The iron pillar sounded like thunder, and the little girl was so scared that she trembled, and she uttered a sentence in a daze. "Yes, it was Empress Concubine Gui himself who ordered." She said, "I want to drink it to the sixth prince." As soon as this happened, the palace exploded again. Zhao Manli suddenly turned around, her eyes full of murder. Unfortunately, it was too late, and everyone could hear it clearly. "Miss Concubine, it seems that your innocence is not very silly." I smiled coldly and turned to the emperor. "Your Majesty, Haotian believes that he has no merit in the border area. He doesn't want to be poisoned and assassinated on the first day of returning to Beijing. If I hadn't been for my great life, I would probably not be able to get out of this hall today. Please make the decision for me." The emperor's face was blue and silent for a moment, and finally said in a deep voice, "Zhao Manli, the matter of poison wine is confirmed. What else do you say?" Zhao Manli knew that Dashing had gone, gritted her teeth and lowered her head and said nothing, but in her eyes, hatred almost overflowed. I sneered in my heart, stood respectfully on my face, waiting for the emperor to fall. "Zhao Manli, the concubine is granted the title of Pretty Princess. She is a commoner. She is in the cold palace. Let's investigate." The emperor immediately turned to me and his temperament was harmonious. "Haotian, I feel very guilty about what happened today. You are working for the country in the border area. If you are killed in the palace, it is actually my mistake. Your Majesty is so serious. Haotian only hopes to be at ease in the future." I said with my head down, and the corners of my mouth slightly raised. The emperor's words were like when people snatched me. Those noble tribes who had originally looked down on me were now afraid to say a low voice, for fear of being hated by me. Sure enough, the emperor pointed a little and said in a deep voice, "I am very relieved if you have the will of your country. From now on, I will be appointed as the assistant of the King of Political Affairs and participate in the government affairs. I hope you will not be in my opinion." As soon as this word came out, the palace was boiling again. The king of politicians? This is a real power. I was ecstatic in my heart, and there was still the same sarcastic expression on my face. "Thank you for your grace, Haotian will not be desirable." The palace banquet continued, but the atmosphere had finally changed. The eyes of those precious tribes looking at me changed from their original contempt to their jealousy. Several old foxes even took the initiative to get close to them and flatter them. I sneered in my heart, and my smile was as hot as they were. "Your Highness, you're so bad." The Iron Master came over and said in a low voice, "I just pulled Zhao Manli off the horse on the first day of my return to Beijing, and I was also known as the King of Zheng. Those veterans are afraid they will die of anger. It's their business that makes me die, and my journey begins. I replied in a low voice, and the corner of my eyes swept across a corner of the hall. There was a woman in a light green palace, lowering her head and sneaking at me from time to time. That was Mu Wanyi, the little concubine in the back palace, with a weak appearance, but actually a deep heart. My super brain told me that this woman is not simple and may become my ally. Zizhu, help me pay attention to concubine Mu there. I ordered in a low voice. I understand, Your Highness wants to help me? Zizhu grinned and pointed. I picked up the wine glass on the table and shook it lightly, and my heart had already begun to count the next step. In this palace, the sacred thing just started. Zhao Manli was the first to fall, and there were still many people waiting to attack me later. However, nothing is said. With super smart brain in hand, I, Lin Haotian, have long been stepping under my feet in this big fire court. The palace banquet ended, the night was dark, and the lights and fires in the palace became darker, but I didn't relax at all. Although the title of King Jing was given, this power was like a double blade. The tighter the grip, the more fierce the countersurge. Zhao Manli was cold in the palace, but the force behind her was not swayed, and the old foxes in the court did not have a fuel-efficient light. This drama tonight may be just an appetizer. Your Highness, let's go back to the palace, it's late at night. Zizhu reminded in a low voice, pressing his thick hands on the hilt of the knife at his waist, his eyes full of warning. Although this guy looks big and thick, his brain is not stupid. He knows that what happened tonight has offended many people. Return to the palace? Humph, I'm afraid this palace is more dangerous than the wolf in the border area. I sneered, and the corners of my eyes were shining across the surroundings. Those women who pretended to be low-headed by the palace were sneaky, and most of them were the eye lines of some people. As expected, I didn't get far away from the hall just after walking out of the hall. A cold wind blew over and brought a breath of silence. Iron pillar, ready, someone has come to give me a gift. I lowered my voice, still smiling, pretending not to notice, and walked slowly towards the side hall. The iron pillar was pleased and replied with a rough voice, Your Highness, let's take this path and take the shortcut back. As he said, he deliberately lowered his body and pressed it in front of me, as if he was making a statement, but he had actually tightened the handle of the knife. On both sides of the path are dense rockery and trees, the moonlight is blocked and the atmosphere is extremely strange. After stepping into this road less than 10 steps, a sudden whisper sounded from my ears, and a cold light rushed towards me. Be careful. The iron pillar roared angrily, and his body suddenly flashed, like an iron tower, and pulled out the long knife in his hand with a glass and directly chopped the flying hidden arrow into 2.5. Humph, can't help it. I sneered, my eyes swept quickly around, and the super brain flew forward, instantly locked 3 hiding points, 2 behind the rockery on the left, and 1 on the right, and the one on the most powerful one was in front. Iron pillar, the 2 on the left are handed over to you, I come on the right, the one on the front is left, I have something to ask. I gave a low voice, and at the same time took out a small dagger from my sleeve. I used this thing to hit by the border, it was light and powerful, and it was specially used for this kind of scene. Get order. Zizhu grinned, as if a wolf had seen the flesh, and suddenly rushed to the rockery on the left. The 2 assassins certainly did not expect to be discovered and appeared in a hurry. The short sword in their hands was flashed, but before they could take action, the iron pillar slashed out one by one, and smashed it to the ground without even humming. At the same time, the assassin in the tree on the right also moved, with crossbows in his hand rising, and the arrows were as dense as rain. I snorted coldly, and on the side of my body, relying on the way to avoid all the arrows calculated by my super brain. The next second, I rushed over with a quick step, and the dagger in my hand accurately planted over his wrist, and the crossbow fell to the ground with a splash. The guy screamed in pain and knelt down and begged for a favor. Don't you live? It's too late. I stepped on his chest, and the dagger pressed against his throat, and asked coldly, Who sent you? I don't even have the chance to cry out in pain. The assassin was covered in cold sweat and vomited a few words, yes, the people from the rear palace. I just took money to do it, please forgive me. Back palace? I narrowed my eyes and sneered in my heart. It was indeed similar to what I thought. Although Zhao Momli was involved, her minions were still there, and these assassins were probably her backup plan. At this time, the Iron Pillar had already solved the two assassins on the left, and strode over and asked with a knife, "Your Highness, what should I do with this guy? Otherwise, I will solve it with one knife to save trouble." "Don't worry, there's still a big one that's not moving." I raised my head and looked straight ahead, and the corner of my mouth slightly raised. "That friend, I've been hiding for a long time, should I come out?" As the voice fell, a man in black walked out from behind the rockery, covering his face, holding a long sword in his hand, and blood dripped from the tip of the sword. It was obvious that he had just solved who was solved. At this moment, he looked at me with cold eyes as cold as ice, and his voice was like Shai, "It is worthy of being the sixth prince of the Gangjiang who came back. He really has some skills. I've won the prize." I smiled coldly, and the super brain in my brain had analyzed the bottom line of this guy. His breathing was stable and his pace was heavy. He was probably a trainer, and his martial arts were no worse than that of the Iron Pillar. "Since you are here, why don't you tell me directly, what kind of moves did Zhao Momli leave? I have limited patience, don't force me to take action automatically." The man in black was silent for a moment, and finally snorted coldly, "Your Highness has such a good eye, and I don't care about the circle anymore. Although concubine Gui is unsuccessful, her foundation has not fallen. There are still many people in the back palace and in the court who heard her. The more people you offend tonight, the faster you die." "Oh? Is this threatening me?" I raised my eyebrows and smiled, and tried a little hard under my feet, so that the assassin screamed, "Since you are so loyal, why don't you tell me who is Zhao Momli's next goal? Or do you want to try my methods too?" The man in black didn't say anything, but there was a flash of slut in his eyes. At this moment, the Iron Pillar suddenly whispered, "Your Highness, be careful." Before the words finished, the man in black raised his hand suddenly, and a cold light rushed towards me. I had a good idea, and I flashed my body and avoided the poisonous lens. At the same time, I kicked the assassin under my foot, and flew directly towards the man in black. He reacted very quickly, and the long sword swung and grabbed the dagger, but in this moment, the Iron Pillar had already penetrated and slashed it hard. Shadow. The swords collided, sparks were 4 times, and the man in black was shocked to retreat a few steps. Obviously he didn't expect the power of the iron column to be so great. He gritted his teeth and looked at me incisively, and said in a low voice, "Your Highness is a good method. Today you are lucky, but no one can keep walking here." After saying that, he shook his sleeves suddenly, and a group of smoke exploded, and quickly disappeared into the night while the smoke was covered. The Iron Pillar still wanted to chase after me, so I raised my hand and stopped. "Don't chase after me, it's useful to keep this guy." "Your Highness, what are you keeping? Such a person is just a warning." Shiju muttered discomfortably, feeling unhappy. "My evil? Humph, he can run, tell me that Zhao Momli hasn't reached the end of the road." I sneered, squatted down and found a token from the assassin on the ground, with the word man engraved on it. It was indeed Zhao Momli's man. "Iron Pillar, take these guys up and enter the dungeon, I have something to ask." "Okay." The Iron Pillar pointed his head and picked up the half-dead assassin on the ground, as if he was carrying a chicken. Although the assassin's matter was resolved, I didn't feel any relaxed. Zhao Momli's strength is even deeper than I thought. He sent an assassin on the first night, and there may be some tricks later. Just as I was thinking, a shattered footstep suddenly came from the front. I bowed and held the dagger tightly, and said in a low voice, "Iron Pillar, someone." But the next second, a weak figure walked out from the corner, wearing a light green palace, lowered his head, and said lightly, "The sixth prince, the fight against him late at night is actually a loss." I looked closely and found that it was Muanya, the little concubine who secretly glanced at me at the banquet. The super brain quickly gave an analysis. The heartbeat is steady and unscrupulous, and it is probably not an enemy. Concubine Mu, it's too late. Are you going to have sex in this remote place? I opened my mouth coldly, without showing any voice on my face, and I was just flying in the speed plate to calculate her intention. Muwaner lowered her head, and her voice was a little timid. Your Highness forgives your crime. I just heard that your Highness meets a villain. I came to see. Is your Highness safe? Oh? The news is so fast? I sneered, walked towards her a few steps, and stared straight into her eyes. Concubine Mu's care surprised me. However, in the middle of the night, you came here alone. Aren't you afraid of encountering any danger? Muwaner's face was slightly red by me, so she quickly lowered her head. Your Highness misunderstood. I just thought that your Highness had a shining light at the banquet today, and I was afraid that someone would be unfavorable to your Highness, so you want to remind me? I raised my eyebrows, and the super brain in my brain had analyzed that there were some true or false things about her words. This woman was indeed not malicious, but her purpose was never simple. Muwan bit her lip, and finally raised her head with courage. Her voice was low and calm. Your Highness, I know that I am a low-level person, but I know a little about the matter in the rear palace. Although Zhao Monli was caught, her confidant was still there, and there were many people in the court who colluded with her. Your Highness first held great power, so don't be careless. Oh? You know a lot. I narrowed my eyes, and my heart was already filled with some interest. Concubine Mu, since you are so sensible, why not say, who is Zhao Monli's next goal? Or, what useful things can you give me? Muwaner was silent for a moment, and finally took out a letter from her sleeve and said in a low voice, Your Highness, this is something I got inadvertently. There is a secret letter from Zhao Monli and an adult in the court. I am fighting and want to use this to change your Highness's protection. I answered the letter and glanced quickly. It was indeed Zhao Monli's penis. The name mentioned in it made me jump. Li Qingshu, Shangshu of the Ministry of War. This old man is a big shot in the court, and unexpectedly he has a connection with Zhao Monli. Okay, Concubine Mu, I'll accept this gift. I put away the letter and raised my lips slightly. From today, you are my person. I'll keep an eye on the things in the back palace, especially those of Zhao Monli's minions. Muwan was busy and said in a low voice, Thank you for your trust, I will definitely not be entrusted. Jiju, send Concubine Mu back, don't let anyone see any clues. I turned my head and told me that my brain had already started to calculate the next step. With the chess piece like Muwaner, I can master the wind and swearing movements of the rear palace. I will be uprooted by Zhao Monli's little movements. Your Highness, is this woman reliable? After seeing Muwaner off, Jiju asked in a low voice. It's reliable or not, you'll know if you try. I sneered, holding the secret letter in my hand, and a cold light flashed in my eyes. Iron Pillar, tomorrow morning, be ready to look good and have a good time. I want to see how long can Li Qingshu be able to hold this. The night was getting deeper, and the murderer in the palace seemed to have not dissipated, but a fire broke out in my heart. In this court in this back palace, who should not think about my way? Zhao Monli, and those guys hiding in the dark, let's play slowly. The next morning, in the court, the atmosphere inside the Jinjiao Hall was as intense as a tight bowstring. All civil and military officials were standing next to each other, each with his head down, and occasionally glanced at me standing in front of His Highness for a few times, with a look full of jealousy. The banquet last night has spread all over the capital. Zhao Monli was cold in the palace. I was granted the title of King of Political Science. This news seems to have grown wings. Who has not heard any sound in his ears? I was wearing a new black court suit, wearing a jade plaque from the Emperor's imperial throne on my waist, standing first in His Highness, with a sneer on my face and a sneer in my heart. I have read the secret letter that Muwanya gave me last night 3 times, and the name of Li Qingshu, the Minister of War, was clearly written on it. This old fox is decorated with a look of loyalty to the king and love the country on his daily life, and is tied with Zhao Monli behind his back, with a large picture. Today, this court is his bone burial place. The king of Jing will come to the scene, and all officials will be honored. The eunuch in front of the hall shouted in a sharp voice. No matter how unwilling the old men were, they had to bow their heads and shouted, "Meet your highness." I glanced at them and my eyes stopped on Li Chengshi for a moment. The old man was wearing a deep blue official robe today, with a smile on his face, but his panic that could not be hidden in his small eyes had long been captured clearly by my super brain. "You lord, don't have to give me a lot of gifts. Today's morning court, let's talk about the important things." I opened my mouth lightly, and my language was neither heavy nor light, which made the atmosphere in the hall more heavy. The emperor sat on a dragon chair, his face was harder than at the palace banquet yesterday, and it was obvious that what happened last night made him sleepless for a night. He pointed at the head and said in a deep voice, "Haotian, since he is the assistant of the king of political affairs, he can say anything bluntly." I felt happy in my heart. The emperor was squeezing me. He was not polite at the moment and bowed, "Your Majesty, I was assassinated last night. Although I was punished, this matter involves the rear palace and the court, so it should not be underestimated. I am fighting, please allow your Majesty to investigate the matter and find out the envoy behind the scenes to make the court official." As soon as this word came out, the whole palace was silent. Although the assassination last night was so popular, no one dared to mention it in the palace. After all, this matter was involved in Manli. Who would have gotten into trouble? But I am not afraid. The super brain has helped me calculate all the details clearly. If I don't pull Li Chengshi down from Ma today, my surname will not be Lin. Check it out? King Zheng, assistant, this is not a trivial matter. Concubine Gui was already in the market yesterday. How could he have any feelings? Li Chengshi came out, his voice neither humble nor arrogant, and he also put on his face as if he was a polite national. I sneered. This old man is still going to act. I wrote it clearly in the secret letter yesterday. He had already colluded with Zhao Manli, and even several important positions in the Ministry of War were stuffed into his own people. He was ready to give me a slap in any time. Mr. Li said it right, this matter is indeed quite good. I glanced at him, raised the corner of my mouth slightly, and then took out the secret letter from my sleeve and raised it high. "Your Majesty, Lord this is the evidence I found from the assassin last night." The secrets of some people in Zhao Manli were recorded in it. The words were clear and the content was detailed. You might as well listen to them. Li Chengshi's face changed instantly, and several old ministers who were close friends with him could not sit still, so he hurriedly stood up and beat the ground. "The king of Zheng, the truth and falsehood of this letter are not determined, how can I be convicted at will?" One by one, someone deliberately gave up. "Sorry." I snorted coldly and turned to the few veterans. "Mr. Master, I said it was a coincidence, but the letter on this letter has been compared with the old man in the imperial book. It was written by Zhao Manli's calligraphy. As for the content..." I deliberately paused for a moment, and my eyes were directly locked in Li Chengshi. "Mr. Li, why do you say yourself? Why does the Ministry of War adjust in this letter? Or is there any unknown transaction between you and Zhao Manli?" The hall was quiet and sounding in an instant. Everyone stared at Li Chengshi, and even the emperor's face was as deep as the sky before the rain. The old man was sweating coldly on his head, and he still said hard, "Your Majesty, you can't say this. The old man is dedicated to the country, so how could he have any connection with the concubine of the Hogong Palace? This letter is probably fake." "Fake?" I sneered and slammed my head. The super brain had already analyzed that his heart was beating faster and his eyes were hiding. The signs of his entitlement were obvious. "Mr. Li, the letter was clearly written clearly. You and Zhao Manli closely talked about the Ministry of War, and even planned to move your hands on the border war. If this is fake, why don't you ask His Majesty to send someone to the Ministry of War to check it out to see if the recent order is really a problem?" Li Chengshi was panicked at all times, and he knelt down with a sound, shouting injustice. "Your Majesty is clear, the old minister will never have this intention. This must be someone who framed the old minister." "Framed? Humph, lordly, you can't save you." I smiled coldly and turned to the emperor. "Your Majesty, I suggest that the Ministry of War should be immediately sealed and sent the imperial army to investigate the Li mansion. If there is any distortion, I would like to take this person to take this account. The emperor was silent for a moment, and finally said in a deep voice, "It's accurate. Come on, I will issue an order to seal the Ministry of War. Li Chengshi will be arrested in the heavenly prison at a time, and I will wait for investigation." "Your Majesty, I'm wronged," Li Chengshi shouted at the top of his lungs, but the imperial army had already come in and took him down in a few seconds. The officials in the hall were stunned. The veterans who were usually close to Li Chengshi were even more shocked and didn't dare to breathe. "Your duty is to assist you, I am very relieved." The emperor pointed his head and said with some satisfaction in his lingerie, "From today, you will take over the affairs of the Ministry of War, and you will be sure to find out all the details." "I obey the order." I lowered my head and bloomed in my heart. The Ministry of War has great power. Taking over this piece of fat meat means that half of the upper court has fallen into my hands. No matter how unwilling those veterans are, they have to consider their own weight. When the morning court was over, I just left the Jinjiao Hall, and the Iron Pillar came over and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, you're so bad." This time I directly put Li Chengshi into the heavenly prison. Those veterans are afraid that they will not be able to sleep. It's their business that can't sleep. We haven't finished our work yet. I sneered, and the brain had already begun to count the next step. "Shiju, send someone to keep an eye on the Li Mansion, and there are also the commands of the Ministry of War, so no word is missing." The link between Zhao Manli and Li Chengshi is 80% more than this letter can explain. The deeper we dig, the harder our trump card will be. "I understand." The Iron Pillar pointed at the head and turned around and arranged the manpower. I stood outside the hall, looking at the direction of the cold palace far away, and a cold light flashed in my eyes. "Zhao Manli, that's just the beginning. I will smash your little calculations one by one." At noon, I was sitting in the royal government looking through the orders of the Ministry of War when Mu Wanya suddenly sent someone to send a secret notice, saying that there was a silence on the cold palace. Although Zhao Manli was taken, her confidant daughter secretly sent a message to the outside world, and the person receiving the message was a guest of Li Chengshi. I snorted coldly in my heart. This woman is really unwilling to give up. She still wants to turn around when she reaches this point. "Your Highness, what should I do? Do you want to arrest people directly?" After reading the secret report, Jiju asked with a full face. "Catch it? It's not a good idea to read it." I slammed my head and slid on the corner of my mouth. "Jiju, send me the order and send someone to pretend to block the letter, but don't be surprised by the manly man. Change the content of the letter and change it to let Li Chengshi's doorman bite out another court boss, the minister's secretary Wang Dequan." Ziju was stunned and immediately grinned. "Your Highness is so arrogant. Let them bite the dog, let's sit and watch." "Yes, dogs are the most interesting." I sneered and pointed, and the super brain in my brain had already calculated the consequences of this move clearly. Wang Dequan and Li Chengshi were already incompatible with each other, and the two fought to the death. As soon as this fake letter was released, they kept their sisters-in-law and were bleeding. Sure enough, 2 days later, the court exploded. Li Chengya's doorman suddenly bit Wang Dequan and said that the account department was in huge amounts of defilement, and the funds flowed to Zhao Manli's private warehouse. Wang De was so excited that he was accused of the scene. Li Chengshi was framed. The two of them quarreled in the face of the emperor, and the civil and military officials in the palace were stunned. "It's so old. What kind of system?" The emperor slapped the dragon chair, his face turned blue. "The king of politicians, how do you think about dealing with this matter?" I stood up and pretended to put on a face and said, "Your Majesty, the two adults have a word each. I suggest that we check it out from both sides. One is the Ministry of War and the other is the Ministry of Civil Affairs. If there is any defilement or confusion, we will definitely not be too careful." The emperor pointed out, "Just as you said, check it quickly." After this investigation, all the dirty things between Wang Dequan and Li Chengshi were revealed. The defiled silver pieces in the department can build a small hill, and the Ministry of War's orders are full of loopholes. several battles in the border areas are unstoppable to Li Chengshi. The two were directly thrown into the prison, their families were not confiscated, and they were exiled. No one in the court dared to have any connection with them. Your Highness, this move is so beautiful. When the Iron Pillar came back to the report, he was full of admiration. Now the veterans in the court saw you, they were like rats and cats, and they couldn't even hide. Hide? I can hide from the first day of the lunar month, but I can't hide from the 15th day of the lunar month. I snorted coldly, holding another secret message in my hand. Mu Wanye sent another new message, saying that Zhao Manli was unwilling to be lonely in the cold palace and had already started contacting foreign ministers, planning a change in the palace. March? What a big treacherous! I sneered and threw the secret letter on the table, a fire ignited in my eyes. Iron Pillar, prepare for the staff. This time I not only want to break Manli's claws, but also make her unable to get up. In the next few days, I was busy dealing with the affairs of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Representatives, and secretly asked Qi Zhu and Mu Wan to work together to find out the list of foreign ministers Zhao Manli contacted. The super brain helped me analyze the weaknesses of these people, which is rich, which is lustful, and which is afraid of death, and they are all clear. I directly sent someone to buy a key figure, so that he could pretend to cooperate with Zhao Manli, and actually reported every step of her plan to me. Your Highness, Zhao Manli has set a date. On the 15th day of the next month, he plans to take action while the high ceremony in the palace. Zhizhu returned with the latest news, and his voice was filled with excitement. She really thought she could turn the plate, and she had arranged the specific staff. Flip the plate? She deserves it. I sneered, and my brain had already calculated the entire plan clearly. Iron Pillar, send me the order. On the 15th day, we will ambush the Imperial Army and beat her people up. Also, Mu Wan's side is not idle, so that she can continue to pretend to help Zhao Manli, and give her a fatal blow at the critical moment. Okay, Your Highness, please wait and see. Zhizhu smiled and turned around to make arrangements. On the 15th day, the palace was filled with a large ceremony, with a bright light, and the surface was filled with joy, but it could be killed secretly. As expected, the Zhao Manli people acted according to the plan, and several foreign ministers rushed into the palace with private troops, intending to take advantage of the situation to hijack the emperor. I was ready for it. The imperial army was ambushing in various important roads, and Mu Wan'er even came out of his own way and took Zhao Manli's confidant into my trap. Xing Jingwan, why are you here? When Zhao Manli's confidant saw me appearing with the royal guard, his face instantly turned white like paper, and everything was said to be unscrupulous. Why are you here? Humph, I'll take you on your way. I smiled coldly and signaled to the imperial army to take action. Without reacting, most of the private soldiers were chopped over by the Iron Pillar. The rest were so scared that they knelt down and begged for the mercy, throwing all their weapons. Your Highness, Zhao Manli's men have been arrested, and no one ran away. Zhizhu wiped the blood from his face and grinned and replied. Okay, take me to Lung Palace, and you should pay the title of Qi Concubine. I snorted coldly and headed straight to Lung Palace. Zhao Manli, this woman has hurt me several times, and today I will send her to the ground with robbery. In the cold palace, Zhao Manli was wearing a torn dress. When she heard the silence, she thought it was her subordinate who had succeeded. She walked out proudly, but when she saw me, her smile instantly froze on her face. Lin Haotian, why are you? Before she finished speaking, the Iron Pillar had already kicked the door open, and pressed the last few confidants on her side to the ground. Zhao Manli, your palace is very exciting. What a pity. The chess is a big move, and the whole plate is gone. I looked at her coldly, holding the letters she had come to the outside minister in my hand, approaching step by step. Poisonous wine, assassin, palace change, you are more ruthless than each move, but unfortunately, in front of me, Lin Haotian, you are not even a scum. Zhao Manli bit her teeth tightly, her eyes full of resentment, but she knew that dashing had gone, so she could only kneel down with a sound, and her voice trembled, Your Highness, let's die. I will never dare again. You're dead? It's too late. I sneered and squatted down, and my eyes stabbed into her eyes like a knife. Zhao Manli, from the moment you poisoned, your life will no longer be yours. Iron Pillar, take the person down and send him to the heavenly prison, and wait for His Majesty to convict. Lin Haotian, you must die a good death. When Zhao Manli was dragged away, she cursed at the top of her lungs, but I didn't even look at her. Such people don't even have the qualifications to waste my eyes. The night fell again, and the lights in the palace reflected the red sky. I stood outside the cold palace, looking at the golden hall far away, and my heart was filled with unrestrained ambition. Zhao Manli fell, and several big men in the court were uprooted by me. The power of the Lord of Throne had reached its peak, but this was not enough. There is a bigger secret hidden under the Emperor's dragon chair, and I, Lin Haotian, have long wanted to hold all of this in my hand. Your Highness, what should I do next? The Iron Pillar walked over and asked in a low voice. Next? I sneered and turned to the back palace far away. Shiju, send someone to keep an eye on Muaner. Although this woman has helped us, her heart is too deep. I have to see how many trump cards she has hidden. The night wind was slightly cool, and the lights and fires in the imperial palace swayed, reflecting the dead silence around the cold palace. The cursed sound of Zhao Manli was still echoing in his ears, but I, Lin Haotian, had no trace of my heart. This kind of woman fought for so long and finally fell down, but I know that this is just the beginning. The old foxes in the court, the undercurrents in the back palace, and even the Emperor sitting high on the dragon chairs, all have bigger secrets. Your Highness, the matter of Lingong has been concluded. What are we going to fuck next? Zizhu wiped the blood from the knife and grinned, grinning, looking excited. The guy was fighting, and just as he removed Zhao Manli's men, his eyes were as bright as a wolf. Do you? Humph, I just felt hot. I sneered, my eyes crossed the broken old courtyard wall of the cold palace and landed in the direction of the far Jinjiao Hall. Zizhu, I sent someone to record Zhao Manli's confession without missing a word, especially her connection with the big men in the court, and they were scattered out. Also, don't relax at Muaner. Although this woman helped us, I always think she still had something hidden. I understand, is your Highness afraid that she will turn against the enemy? Zizhu pointed his head, responded with a rough voice, and turned around and arranged the manpower. I stood outside the cold palace, and the super brain in my brain was flying and moving quickly, filtering what happened these days. Zhao Manli fell, and Li Chengshi and Wang Dequan in the court also fell. The power of King Jing was at its peak, but the Emperor always gave me a strange feeling. At the banquet, he thrust me, and during the morning court, he handed over the authority of the Ministry of War to me. On the surface, it seemed to be trust, but the super-intellectual brain kept warning me, the Emperor's mind was not simple, and there was a greater infatuation behind it. Your Highness, Muanya has sent the news. Not long after, Zizhu returned with a secret letter, with a strange face. She said that the Emperor often had secret meetings with a mysterious man recently, and the location was in the Imperial Book Room. It was midnight, and even the two-supervised person was left behind. Mysterious man? I raised my eyebrows, took the secret letter and glanced at it. Sure enough, I wrote clearly, and the specific days of the secret meeting were marked out. A woman like Muanya is really capable and can be touched by such things. I snorted coldly in my heart, Emperor, no matter how deep you hide, don't try to escape from my eyes. Zizhu, I will take a few trustworthy people to go outside the Imperial Book Room to guard it. I put the secret letter into my sleeves and slightly raised my lips. I want to see with my eyes what this Supreme Emperor is playing with. The night was getting deeper, and the surrounding area of the Imperial Book Room was so quiet that even the birds could not hear it. Zizhu and I were carrying several carefully selected waiters, hiding in the dark, even our breathing was extremely low. The super brain helped me lock in the best viewpoint and ensure that I would not be discovered. As expected, just after the third update, a faint light lit up in the Imperial Book Room. A tall and thin black shadow slipped in from the side, acting sneakily, as if afraid of being caught by someone. Your Highness, that guy went in. At first glance, he looked like he was too supervised, but he didn't walk like a stance. The iron pillar sounded softly, full of doubts. "Don't worry, just look at it." I smiled coldly, and my super brain had already begun to analyze the body and pace of the shadow, and quickly concluded, this person was not too supervisory, but a martial artist, and was probably the trust of a boss in the court. My heart sank. The emperor had a secret meeting with such a person in the middle of the night. Is there any secret that cannot be told? Time passed by minute, and the light in the imperial room swayed and a deep voice came out. Unfortunately, it was too far apart and I couldn't hear the specific content clearly. Just as I was about to let the iron column get closer, the door suddenly opened, and the black shadow walked out quickly and disappeared into the night without looking back. The emperor's figure appeared at the door, wearing a casual outfit, his face as dark as the day before the rain. "Your Highness, the emperor's expression is not right at all." Shiju muttered in a low voice, full of vigilance. "It's not against each other." I narrowed my eyes, and the super brain in my brain quickly replayed the just shot, capturing a detail. The emperor's hand was shaking, as if it was extremely stressed to suppress some emotion. There are only two possibilities for this expression: it is extreme fear and extreme anger. But why would a king of a country turn out like this? "Shiju, send someone to follow the shadow and find out his bottom line." I ordered softly, and at the same time, I made up my mind to dig it to the end. The emperor's secret may be my last trump card. In the next few days, I was busy handling court affairs on the surface, and secretly letting Shiju and Mu Wanyan work together to investigate the identity of the Black Shadow. There are many eyes and ears in the imperial palace, so it is not easy to hide something. Sure enough, within 3 days, the Iron Pillar brought back the news that the Black Shadow was the trust of a small official in the office, but the real mastermind behind the scenes was still Zhao Manli. "Your Highness, this is an evil gate. Zhao Manli has been in the prison. How could he still get involved with the emperor?" Shiju was puzzled and asked in his brain. "Evil? Humph, this is the cleverness." I sneered, holding the evidence brought back by the Iron Pillar in my hand. The super brain in my brain had already linked everything together. Although Zhao Manli fell, her strength had already penetrated into the court and the palace, and even the emperor was controlled by her. In those years, she used poisons, threats, and even beauty to control the emperor, making him a puppet. The emperor was arrogant on the surface, but in fact he could not save his life, so he could only listen to her arrangements. "Shiju, prepare for the manpower and force Zhao Manli's confession in the prison again. This time I want her to spit everything cleanly." I ordered coldly, and my eyes were as sharp as a knife. "Also, Muwaner, let her continue to dig the emperor's bottom, and she will find the iron certificate for his transaction with Zhao Manli." "Okay, Your Highness, please wait for good news." The Iron Pillar pointed his head and turned around and went to do the job. A few days later, the iron certificate was finally obtained. In the prison, Zhao Manli was forced to hide no longer, and cried and brought everything out. She admitted that most of the emperor's orders in the past few years were given by her, and even the adjustment of the border wars was arranged by the emperor, in order to weaken the strength of other princes and ensure her status. The reason why the emperor heard her was because she was holding a bottle of poisonous medicine in her hand, which was colorless and tasteless, which could cause chronic death. The emperor had been poisoned, and only she had the medicine. "Lin Haotian, what can you do if you know? The emperor's life is in my hands. If you dare to move me, he will not be able to survive." Zhao Manli shouted wildly when he was escorted. "Move you? Humph, I'm not only trying to move you, I also want you to watch how everything I have carefully arranged collapsed." I smiled coldly, let the Iron Pillar tilt her down, and the last blow in my brain began to count. With these iron certificates, I directly reported to the emperor and exposed Zhao Manli's crimes in the face of civil and military officials of the court. In the Jinjiao Hall, all the officials were shocked, and the controversy sounded one after another, while the emperor's face was as white as paper, and he could not even say a word when sitting on a dragon chair. "Your Majesty, Zhao Manli is guilty of great sin, controls the government and poisons the sacred body. I suggest that he be immediately rushing to the court." I stood up, with a loud voice, and every word pierced into the emperor's heart like a knife. The super brain has analyzed his psychological state: fear, anger, and deep powerlessness. He knew that I was forcing the palace, but I didn't dare to respond, because once the truth was revealed, his dragon chair would be unstable. The king of Zheng is assisting. Is this really true? The emperor's voice trembled, his eyes full of thrust. Your Majesty knows whether it is true or not. I smiled coldly, took out Zhao Manli's confession and the evidence of poisonous medicine from my sleeve, and lifted it up high. This is the confession recorded in the heavenly prison, and the poisonous medicine she hid in the cold palace. The doctor of the imperial doctor has experienced it. It is indeed a chronic poison. If your Majesty does not believe it, you can summon the doctor of the imperial doctor to the right place. The hall was so quiet that it was heard in an instant that everyone looked at the emperor and waited for his decision. His magnitude was full of cold sweat, and he finally gritted his teeth and said, "It's accurate. Zhao Manli's crimes are unforgivable, and he will be punished immediately. All the same party will be investigated seriously. Your Majesty is a silence." I lowered my head and sneered in my heart. Zhao Manli is dead, but I have to lift the dragon chair for him today. Your Majesty, I have something to say. I raised my head and stared at the emperor straight, neither humble nor arrogant. Although Zhao Manli died, his crimes were very widespread, and even the holy bodies were poisoned by him. I am fighting, please abdicate and recover from illness at a time, and let me take the post as the ruler, and wait until your Majesty recovers. As soon as this word came out, the palace was blown up. The officials widened their eyes and held their breath, while the emperor stood up suddenly, trembling with anger. Lin Haotian, you are such a big slut. How dare you force the palace? Forcing the palace? Your Majesty is so serious. I smiled coldly, and the super-intellectual brain in my brain had already calculated his trump card clearly. I am just considering the Great Yan country. Your Majesty is poisoned. If you don't calm down, you may feel guilty about your life. As a king of politics, I should share the affairs of the country. How can I be loyal? You. The emperor was so blocked by me that he was speechless, his face was blue, and he couldn't find any retort. The civil and military officials in the court were in talks with each other, and no one dared to stand up and speak to him, because they all knew that I am now full of power. Whoever dares to touch my bad luck is the next Li Qingxue. Your Majesty, I am sincere, please think twice. I bowed again, with unquestionable power in my voice. The emperor gritted his teeth and looked humiliated, but in the end he sat down powerlessly and said in a low voice, "Okay, according to what King Jing said, I abdicate and suffer from illness. Your Majesty is a bright light." I lowered my head and slided on the corner of my mouth. Only then did the civil and military officials in the palace react, kneeling down and shouting, "The king of political science is 1,000 years old," the sound of shocking the sky. I stood in the hall, looking at the empty dragon chair, and my heart was filled with pleasure. This day, I finally stepped on the dying court under my feet. A few days later, the emperor was invited to the side palace to get ill. On the surface, he was static, but actually banned. And I, in the name of King Zheng, officially took over the government and became the real overlord of the Great Yan Dynasty. Your Highness, this world is yours now. Zizhu stood beside me and said in admiration. The world? It's still early. I sneered, stood outside the Jinjiao Hall, looking at the sky far away. Iron Pillar, send me the order that the border wars must be taken down, and the internal affairs must be staggered. I want to make this great country of fire, and who should not try to exert any more bad thoughts. Okay, what your Highness says is what you say. Zizhu smiled and turned around and went to do things. As night falls, the lights and fires are bright inside the palace. I stand in front of the hall, overlooking this world belonging to me. From the down-and-out prince who returned from the border to the current monarch of the government and the political king who is now in power, I stepped on the enemy's bones and walked step by step to the top. All the tragedy, secret killing, and betrayal were crushed under my feet. From now on, in this Great Yan Dynasty, Only the voice of me, Lin Haotian. The wind blows over and brings a sense of joy, but my heart is filled with blood. The world is about the beginning, and it is just the beginning of my era, and it just kicks off.